194 foot-pounds of torque. Sure, that's a totally believable and realistic number. Hey folks, welcome back to the channel where a middle-aged man sits in front of a microphone and tells you why everything sucks. Today's episode, the LiveWire S2 Del Mar. Now, I wrote about this on my website. I don't know if you knew I had a website, but I do. I wrote about this on my website last month, and it bothered me so much that I'm going to talk about it here. Now, this is RevZilla's fault, actually. More specifically, Zack Courts. See, on his Daily Rider video about this motorcycle, he talked about some things, and it's bothered me ever since. Before we do get into that, though, I want to talk about the LiveWire itself. The S2 is Harley-Davidson spin-off LiveWire's second platform. The first one was the $30,000 motorcycle that Ewan and Charlie rode up from South America in the 11-episode Harley-Davidson / Rivian commercial, Long Way Dumb. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. Back to the S2, it starts at $15,500. And after taxes and fees and everything, particularly if you live in California like I do, you're not going to get out the door for less than $17,000. And that's not a little bit of money. So what do you get for that? Well, 0 to 60, 3 seconds. It's not bad. It's great for a car, but for a motorcycle, it's just fine. 84 horsepower, yeah, that's enough for most people. Most of my bikes have less than that. Top speed, 103. Could argue that's a bit unnecessary, but, you know, triple digits is triple digits. 194 foot-pounds of torque. Sure, that's a totally believable and realistic number. Now back to Zack. I knew this video was going to be problematic for me right from the very beginning.
And just like any electric motorcycle, there are plenty of concerns and criticisms swirling around this bike about how far you can go before the battery runs out and how much it costs. And to be honest, I'm just a little bit bored with those conversations.
I'm a little bored with these conversations too, Zack. Maybe if motorcycle companies would make electric motorcycles that didn't suck so much, these conversations would be over. But then we get to the root of the problem.
Now on to the topic of range for the LiveWire Del Mar. Basically, it seemed like 50 to 70 miles of range was what was to be expected for all of our testing. Now, in my opinion, that is not bad. I think that that's pretty acceptable actually for a bike like this. It's like if you can go 50, 60 miles, whatever, that should cover a pretty sizable commute, especially if you can plug in on the other end.
50 miles for $15,000, and that's acceptable? It might be acceptable for a human-powered bicycle, but not a motorcycle, particularly one that's $15,000. One more time, $15,000 for 50 miles. He does say later in the video that motorcycles are all about compromises, and you know, that's true. I'll buy into that. Every bike that I own has some level of compromise, and probably compromises that other people wouldn't tolerate. The Goldwing is heavy and expensive. There's no question about that. The Ural and the Trail 125 are both slow and expensive for what you get. However, when you talk about electric motorcycles, particularly the S2, it's not really a compromise, it's more of a fatal flaw, particularly when you're talking about 50 miles of range, and then you have to recharge at best 78 minutes, and at worst, almost 8.5 hours. So you're really stuck with that 50 miles. Now, motorcycles have evolved over the years into more specialized tools. There's track bikes and sport bikes and touring bikes and whatever kind of bikes. You're not limited, though, to use them that way. Maybe you want to ride long distance on your mini moto. Maybe you want to take your Goldwing off-road. Zack rode a 125 to Prudhoe Bay. He and Ari rode the Dumb and Dumber scooter to Aspen. The point being, you can pretty much do anything on any bike, even though that's not its intended purpose. And you lose that when you're stuck with a range of 50 miles. If I bought a Del Mar, I'm not even sure that I'd be able to get it to work. My commute's over 50 miles each way, and I already have range anxiety, along with, you know, regular anxiety. And if the dash already has a low warning light, and I'm pulling into the parking lot of work, I'm going to have to take a Xanax. And I can't take a Xanax at work, Zack. My 125 can get up to 180 miles out of its 1.4 gallon tank. The worst gas mileage I've ever seen was I could still get 80 miles out of the tank. It'll struggle to do 50 miles an hour getting there, but it'll do it. Maybe this bike makes more sense further east where you're not so spread out like we are on the West Coast. One of my favorite places to ride is in Death Valley, and that's 180 miles from my house. So you're telling me that in order for me to take this bike just to Death Valley, I would have to stop and recharge 3 times before I even got to the park border. There aren't any chargers in the desert. That's a problem. When Ewan and Charlie did their LiveWire commercial that I had mentioned earlier, they had factory support. They had people installing chargers all up and down South America to make that trip even attemptable. We don't live like that. No normal human being lives like that and has a chase team or a forward team installing chargers as we go. It's just not how we live. Now, I understand that media outlets like RevZilla, they need to not burn bridges if they want to continue having relationships with manufacturers. It is a business. I get that. I imagine this is probably why he downplays in this video the atrocious range that this bike has. Now, I'm just a nobody on the internet. Being a nobody affords me a certain level of freedom that maybe Zack doesn't have and others don't have. Even so, I've been approached by folks, brands, to do reviews and review various motorcycle products. Do you know why I haven't done a review for one of these groups that reached out to me? So when I tell them that I need the freedom to say whatever I want about their product, they ghost me. That's not to say that I don't have a price. That price is just a lot more than a free pair of heated gloves. Most of the things that I've seen online that are positive about this bike sound like people just trying to justify that purchase decision for themselves. You're seeing a lot of that right now with the dumpster fire known as a CyberTruck. Oh, I spent $100,000 on this car and it's fallen apart and it's been in the shop for 3 months, but it's the best truck ever. It's not. Stop pretending. It's just silly. I'm conflicted. On the one hand, early adopters of technology like this pay a premium for being an early adopter and getting this cutting edge type of technology. But on the flip side of that, isn't it just really these manufacturers thinking they can charge as much as they do for the products that they're giving us? Is this even cutting edge anymore? Can we call these people early adopters when electric vehicles have been around for a while already? I think they're just trying to get away with it and charge more for an inferior product that is just not necessary. Maybe top speed and 0 to 60 times and unrealistic, though possibly true from a mechanical perspective, torque specs aren't where we should be focusing. Maybe give me a motorcycle with 200 miles of range that'll only do 65 miles an hour. Or fix the technology so that it doesn't take 8 hours to charge my motorcycle after I've driven to the post office and back. I get that people spend lots of money on Harley Davidson touring bikes and BMW GSs, and they don't go any farther than 15 miles to the local bike night or to Starbucks. But the folks who market these motorcycles are marketing the idea and the fantasy that you're going to go on these adventures. And how are you going to do that when your bike can only go 50 miles? What image are they trying to promote here? If this bike was $7,000 or $8,000, it would make a lot more sense for somebody's second or third motorcycle in the garage to putz around town. At over 15, I can't see who this bike is for. It does look kind of cool, I'll give them that. But if I just want a bike that looks cool and sits in my garage and I can sit in my lawn chair and drink beer next to, I'll buy an old Ducati 996. I don't need this LiveWire thing. If you live in a big city and you just want something that can get you around congested city streets that's somewhat practical, a Honda PCX is way more practical and much less expensive, and it'll hurt a whole lot less when somebody eventually steals it. I'm not anti-electricity. I'm really not. I think we have an opportunity here, and I want electric motorcycles to be good, and I think that's why the S2 bothers me so much, because it's just not good. 50 miles for this much money is ridiculous and not something any of us should put up with. And those 50 miles are when the battery pack is new. How often do you have to charge your cell phone because the lithium batteries are going bad? Or your laptop? They don't last forever, and new is as much range as you're going to get out of this bike. It's only going to get worse. Am I way off base Am I just missing something that's obvious about what makes this bike so great? If you have an S2, feel free to tell me in the comments why I'm so wrong. And Zach, I'm very bored with this conversation as well. Maybe if these motorcycle manufacturers stop selling us garbage, we can finally end this conversation. If you stuck around this long, thanks for watching. I'll put the links to all the original videos in the description section. I'll see you next time.